guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Okay, we are live. So welcome everyone. Thanks for listening to Anonymous Bites Back. Today we are kind of having a special broadcast together with Potkaars and Viruswaanzin. This is about the protests on the Malieveld in The Hague in the Netherlands. These are protests that have been declared illegal by the government. The fact is that these protests are actually against a new so-called emergency law in the Netherlands that is literally going to restrict a lot of basic human rights, including the right to protest, for at least, if I'm correct, 2 years. So there is some irony there, but so we're going to cover everything that happened today and also last week, and the things this is about. We will give some details about this new emergency law, and if you guys want, please help us to share this around. Everyone is dealing with shadow bans around this. We're facing a lot of trolls and also a lot of suspended accounts on different social media, simply for providing some truth about things and the entire situation. So guys, welcome and thanks for listening. And hey, I got a guest here. He's the host of podcast Potkaars.nl, Rico Brouwer, and he's been covering these protests from the start, I guess, and so he can help us shed some light on this. So welcome, Rico.
Hello, Mark. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so these are two Dutch guys talking English to each other, yeah?
Yeah, it's weird as hell, but whatever.
So, yeah, I host, I do a few things, but I host a Potkaars podcast. That thing exploded in people subscribing to it, so welcome everybody that's new. And also we're streaming to Willem Engel or Viruswaanzin, their YouTube channel. So that's 500 people currently, in addition to what Anonymous usually has as an audience. So welcome everybody.
Yeah,
right, so what we have here, so let me start off here. Maybe for new listeners, just very briefly. People know the Guy Fawkes mask, right? That mask with the mustache and stuff, and the word anonymous. So this is a podcast, Mark. Maybe you can explain where your audience is.
Yeah, so Anonymous Bites Back, we broadcast on like 15 different social media, and Anonymous is not a group, it is like an idea. Everyone can use this, and it's pretty much a method of protest that you stay anonymous, right? And that has some security reasons. You want to stay safe against certain people you're protesting against, and it also works to amplify your message and the message of others when you are united behind an idea as such. And this specific show, this podcast, is created as a free speech platform. We're going to just like give a voice to people, to movements who actually need it. And okay, this is I guess the perfect opportunity to actually do this. And yeah, we have you can find youtube.com Anonymous Bites Back, or periscope.tv/Anonymous Bites Back. Just search on YouTube, or find it on Twitter at ABB Live Show. You can just search for whatever on whatever place for Anonymous Bites Back, and you will find it. But so this is the perfect opportunity to actually give a voice to people in the Netherlands who need it. And to be honest, it doesn't happen so often. The last time we all really needed it in the Netherlands, in Europe in general, was during the whole Stop Acta 2 movement thing, where we were facing internet centers, a new copyright directive that was going to censor our internet, and we were all going to the streets because of that. And right now,
Excellent. I did an interview just not so long ago with a guy from Poland on ACTA too. So that's not the topic of today. Copyright is not what we're talking about. This will be about the coronavirus and the measures taken by our Dutch government against coronavirus, or against whatever else they're trying to suppress. But we're going to discuss what's happening in the Netherlands as of March, really, I think. What do you think, Mark? Should we start in March?
Yeah, we should. We'll just take it from the start, I guess, like how this entire thing started growing and what the government did to respond to it.
Yeah, well, as a personal note, I was having a dinner out somewhere on a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and then there was a press conference by our Prime Minister, and he says, well, we're going to do some lockdown measures, and places like restaurants are going to be closed. So actually I had to vacate the restaurant, and this happens all over the globe. Now, that was mid-March, I suppose. And, at that time, we didn't know what was going on with the virus, just like the rest of the world. But then people started to investigate, and we saw the fallout, and we saw people getting sick, and we saw people getting to the hospital, and we started to learn what this virus was about. But we also learned that maybe those measures were disproportionately strong. And then one thing led to another, and a group of people got together and said, well, we have to stop this. They're not stopping this by themselves. And they decided to take the Dutch state to court. Now, two faces or two people that are leading that is, one of them is a lawyer, Jeroen Pols, and the other one is an activist called Willem Engel. So you're actually watching this from Willem Engel's YouTube channel, possibly. 300 people currently. And my name is Rieke Brouwer, and I'm a podcaster. I interview people on the Potkaars channel. Now, all three of us, of those two guys, were in court last week. Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel, they were in court, and I was a journalist sitting in the audience, so to speak. So let me talk you through their start of the legal proceedings and the protests that are happening in the Netherlands as well. So they filed a lawsuit, and in the Netherlands, and pretty much that I'm assuming that this works the same way in the rest of the world as well. You have the regular proceedings, and they take time, but sometimes you're in a hurry, right? If there's a strike or if there's whatever, some emergency, then you go through court faster. And in the Netherlands, that would be called a kort geding, short proceedings or something. So they filed the kort geding, and it took another 2 weeks or 3 weeks before that thing got a date, and they assigned a judge who had ample time to prepare. So Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel and their crew, they wrote a very lengthy, elaborate piece claiming that the lockdown measures in the Netherlands were disproportionate and they were limiting our fundamental human rights and constitutional rights. So the judge got all the time to prepare, and while he was doing that, those guys also decided to organize some protests. Now, that first protest was also last week, and our government is in The Hague, right, in the Netherlands, in Europe, in The Hague. That's a big city. There's a big field out there. It's called Malieveld. It's just a big grassy field. That's where we protest. That's what the Dutch do. If there's a national thing going on, we go to The Hague. That's where we protest. So they organize the protest. And in the Netherlands, you don't have to ask for permission to protest. I mean, it's a constitutional right. You're allowed to protest regardless, whatever. But they do ask you to volunteer information and to organize it. So that's what they did. They said, we're going to protest. We're going to have a stage there. We're going to have speakers there. We're going to have music there. So now you know. So now you can help us put that thing together. So they told this to the city of The Hague. And the mayor didn't respond. For over a week, he didn't respond. The police did, and they were working together with the police. That was a nice cooperation. But up until the last day before the protest was due, like on a Friday morning, mayor said, I'm going to block it. I'm going to ban it. I'm not going to allow it. Now, there are grounds for a mayor to not allow a protest, but they have to be very serious grounds. I mean, he's blocking a constitutional right. That typically does not happen. But he blocked that protest on the grounds of it being a festival. Well, festivals are not allowed, like in much other parts of the world. I mean, we're having a corona crisis. We're not supposed to have a festival. We're not supposed to have outdoor music festivals. So we're not supposed to have a demonstration with music and stuff. So that was one of the grounds that he used to block that protest. And also it was said, well, it might be too big. And we have the 1.5 meter rule here. So you're not supposed to be close to somebody else. And we might not be able to host everybody on that big field. So those would be the grounds. Health, like if you're too close to each other, there might be health issues. And if it looks like a festival, we're going to block it like a festival, even though it's a demonstration. So these guys, Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel and their organization, they claimed that these were not valid grounds. And they took that to court. You can take that to court as well. So that's a really fast procedure. They did that in the afternoon, and in the evening, the judge ruled in favor of the mayor. So the protest was blocked. So, yeah, this is going to be a bit of a confusing number of events taking place. We have this court proceeding that I haven't discussed just yet, just the regular case against the state of the Netherlands saying, well, we shouldn't have this lockdown at all. And also we shouldn't have the emergency law that's about to follow it. Then we have this demonstration that's going on as well. And some other stuff. So I'm going to try to keep that in the right order. One of the things I didn't mention just yet is a petition that was also taking place. So a petition is like where you can sign, right? Online, you can use a web form and you can say, I'm signing this petition. And there was this petition that says, stop the lockdown. There was a petition that says, let's go back to normal. There was a petition that said, stop the emergency measures. And those petitions together had up to 500,000 signatures. Now, for the Netherlands, that's a significant amount. It's the biggest petition ever for an online petition. We've never had such a big petition. That's almost up to 500,000 signatures. And the Netherlands has like 17.7 million people living here. So that's a significant number. The biggest one ever.
I think so.
Now, these guys... Yeah? You want to
No,
ask?
I think so too. I think it's the biggest petition ever in the Netherlands.
So these guys reached out to the other petitions and said, well, let's join efforts. I mean, we're all fighting the good cause and it's the same cause. And they agreed. So those petitions were combined and they wanted to hand them over to our Dutch parliament. But yeah, we're in lockdown. The Netherlands is in lockdown. And our prime minister uses a fancy newspeak word. He calls it the smart lockdown. But you can call it what you want. It's still a lockdown. So they were not allowed inside the court buildings where you would typically volunteer your petition. They had to do it through an online channel. And when they did that, the technology was failing, so they had to reschedule. And they rescheduled it a couple of days ago. But they were not allowed inside the buildings. So I was there. We were outside Parliament building. we were overlooking, on a sunny afternoon, we were overlooking our Parliament with a little laptop and cameras there, volunteering our petition of 500,000 signatures to Dutch Parliament. It was only a few days before that blocked demonstration took place. The demonstration was not allowed to go through, so this was last week Sunday. And so they canceled the stage. I mean, if you're not allowed, what are you going to do? You're going to put the stage there and speakers there? It's not allowed. Police are going to break your stage. So they decided, well, we're not going to have this demonstration then last week Sunday, but hundreds of people decided to go anyway. This is what took place last week Sunday on that demonstration. On that big field in The Hague, the Malieveld, police was there, intimidating whoever showed up. And that intimidating means taking your horses, people on horses, taking your police officers, circling the protesters, driving them off the field, intimidating them. And they managed for a while, but then there were too many people. So the feeling of the people there, it was not comfortable. It was a bit scary, but then there were too many of them, and we won back the field. So as of that moment, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it was a happy, friendly gathering, a picnic of a couple of hundred people on that field, and that was all fun. Then the hooligans showed up, or rather, people dressed as civilians in the appearance of football supporters. You call them hooligans. Football as in soccer for American people. It's not your kind of football, but whatever. And after a while, they decided to walk off the field, singing their songs, and managed to have a bunch of people on that field protesting to follow them. So we had a bit of a, I don't know the word, but lots of people were queuing out and singing their songs and walking off the field. Now, the moment that happened, some sort of riot started at the front of that queue, at the front of that line. And that's when police started to intervene, putting up their water cannons, and that's when some small riots broke out. Now, what we don't know still is who were those hooligans or football supporters. What we do know is that there's a little video circulating on the internet of a few of those guys dressed as civilians running from that queue of protesters to a police van looking for rescue. Those were police officers dressed as civilians. So at least a few of those hooligans were police officers dressed as civilians, and rumor has it that they might have actually tried to lure some of the protesters off the field. And that worked. I mean, protesters were off the field. They managed to make the news saying, well, it was a friendly protest for a little while, but then riots started. Well, yeah, there was some minor violence and water cannons. The remaining protesters on that field doing their protest peacefully were surrounded again, and a few hundred of them were arrested. So that was our protest last Sunday. Now, that big stage on Sunday wasn't allowed to go through. We didn't want it to go through. I mean, you can't have your stage and your DJs. There were pretty big DJs, for pretty big Dutch DJs and national known speakers were lined up. You can't have that if it's a banned protest. So what this organization decided to do is organize a secret ad hoc studio and just stream them. So they had their stage with cameras on it, lights on it, on a secret location, and they had their protest streamed to the internet regardless. So we had the protest on the Malieveld, we had the stage taking place through internet, and that was our protest last Sunday, and that felt good. But what didn't feel good for me, so this is a personal note on this, so I'm trying to be factual here. People will correct me in the chat on the side note, so you'll see if I screw up somewhere. But the mayor didn't block this particular protest for health reasons or because it looks like a festival. He blocked all protests that Sunday on this topic. So nobody was allowed to protest the corona measures, the emergency measures, and the new emergency law that was under development. So this was a block on topic. Now that's, as far as I know, unprecedented in the Netherlands. You're not allowed to protest this topic. Only a day before, we had our Black Lives Matter protest here in the Netherlands. That was allowed to go through. So the one topic is allowed to go through, and the next day the other one is not. So there's some tension in the air there. Now, this organization that did the Malieveld demonstration on Sunday, and it was blocked, decided to do an alternative approach. So they said, let's not go to the Malieveld, even though people did. They decided to do the alternative stage venue through online. And they said, well, if our democracy just died, let's just mourn our democracy and let's just all put flowers in front of our city halls all through the Netherlands. And lots of people responded to that, bought flowers, went to their city hall and put flowers in front of the doorstep on a Sunday. Well, city hall was closed, so that was nice. Gave us some nice pictures and they mourned our democracy dying. Now in The Hague, in our capital, people trying to bring flowers to City Hall were blocked as well. So not only is giving each other a hand with our social distancing measures, not only is giving a hand a sign of protest, also giving flowers, putting flowers in front of your city hall is now a sign of resistance, sign of protest. They were intimidated as well. But looking back, and this is a personal note again, it feels like we won. I mean, we were on the field, we were happily protesting, even though the end was messed up. We had our flowers in front of City Hall, and we had the stage with the speakers broadcast to the internet. So that Sunday, that was cool. Back to the petition. Last Tuesday, I don't know, last week. So we had these 500,000 signatures. We were delivering them through the online connection to our parliament. And some of the protesters, they were out there eating their lunch or riding their bicycle. They saw us doing what we were doing. And they joined. And they gave an account of what happened to them on that field. One of the guys lowered his pants and said, "Oh, look, this is my leg. It's all bruised. This is where I was hit by police. I was just protesting out there." So things are heating up somewhat, but we delivered our petition, 500,000 signatures. And then this organization decided to take a slightly different approach. I mean, if the mayor is going to ban a protest that you announce way in advance, and they're apparently not cooperating, let's do it slightly differently. That's what they thought. So they announced 10 or 20 protests all through the Netherlands and said, well, we don't know where we're going to show up, but we might show up everywhere or just one. So these are the locations we're announcing our protest. So this is Dutch law, right? You're supposed to announce your protest. So that's what they did. You're not asking for permission. You're just announcing it so the local police can assist you in having your constitutionally allowed protest. Now, all those protests were blocked again. So they were not allowed to proceed. They took The Hague to court again in the fast procedure and say, well, we're not having our stage here. We're not having our, what you call the festival. We just want to protest on that field, on the Malieveld. It was blocked again for health reasons. Now, one of the things that gave us is a clear view on our mayor's line of thought. I mean, that festival argument last week, that was bullshit. That wasn't the festival argument. He wanted to block regardless. So now all we said is we want to be on that field, protest, bring a guitar. We're going to bring flowers, we're going to bring guitars, we want to protest. And if we don't have a guitar, we're going to bring, I don't know, drums or whatever, musical instruments. It was blocked regardless, again, for health reasons. Now, the incubation time of coronavirus is like 5 days to 2 weeks. We've had a bunch of those Black Lives Matter protests, and some went through. Maybe all went through. Thousands of people on a close location, nobody got sick. So that health argument our mayor uses, it is in line with our government's position, but it's not substantiated with the results of previous protests. Nobody got sick. Corona, for all we know, might have left the Netherlands in any significant numbers. But this organization decided to cancel all those protests in the Netherlands and said, well, we're going to focus on The Hague again. We're going to go to the Malieveld again and not do a stage this time. We're just going to protest. But it was blocked again. And the police made a different statement this time. So this was today, right? Mayor of The Hague, Dutch police made a different statement. compared to last week. This time they said, we are going to block you from that field, whatever it takes. So you better not show up. We are going to remove you from that field. Now, this is not something common to the Netherlands, so I still don't know what they mean. I do know that they have upgraded their police officers last week. So it's not the army just yet, but it is a step closer to bringing in the army. So again, this organization says, well, we're a peaceful organization. We do love, we do patience, we do community. And we're not going to that field to get beaten up by police. That's not our statement. We want these measures removed. We want our constitutional rights back. We want our democracy back. We want our right to protest back. And if you're going to show your abuse of power in this manner, we ask people not to show up. So that's what they did yesterday evening and this morning. People don't go to the Mali field in The Hague. You'll only get beat up, and that's not our mission. Our mission is to restore our democracy. But a couple of hundred people showed up anyway, and they were arrested. I don't know exactly what happened, but a couple of hundred people did show up, and they were blocked, and I believe up to 50 at least were arrested. Now, at the same time, this afternoon in Groningen, which is in the north of the Netherlands, another group organized a demonstration as well on the same topic, like stop these emergency measures, stop that new law that is violating our constitution. And that protest in Groningen was allowed to go through. So while in The Hague, in our nation's capital, or where our parliament is, this protest was blocked, in Groningen, that local administration, that local mayor said, well, yeah, let's proceed. And that was just what we had in mind for The Hague. It was peaceful, it was friendly, a couple of hundred people were there having a nice little protest. So all was good. So it still can happen, but you have to travel to the north of the Netherlands. Now, the Hague, where the Mali field is, this big square of grassland where we protest, this is a symbolic location. Whenever there's a national issue, that's where we go. We would go to The Hague and protest it there. So if you block it there, that's a national block. And that was today. Then to that court proceedings. We still I haven't discussed what happened in court, right? This organization took the state of the Netherlands to court. They said, we do not agree with these emergency measures. We consider them unconstitutional, and we consider them groundless. And there might have been some ground for it, arguably, when we started mid-March, if you didn't know what coronavirus was all about. But still, there is no ground in a virus for blocking such demonstration for national health reasons. So they took that to court, and that court took place last week. And I'm a journalist. I wanted to be there. So I called the courtroom and said, well, can I be there? No. It's blocked for the audience. You're not allowed to be in court for as a public, even though in the Netherlands, these court proceedings are publicly accessible, right? They're open, they're transparent. But as of corona measures, our court proceedings are not open to the public anymore. So I said, no, I'm a journalist, so I want to be there as a journalist. So in their temporary arrangements, it said only 3 journalists may be present. So I was the first one to call them because I'm kind of involved with this organization. I'm following them closely, and they gave me the date of the court proceedings. So I called the courtroom as the first one there. And even though I host a little podcast, I felt first in queue. But and I managed to get in, so that worked. But they decided to stream it. They decided to stream the court proceedings. Now in the Netherlands, they would typically ask a commercial party to arrange that stream. And in the Netherlands, our public broadcasting corporation is called the NOS, the Nederlandse Omroep Stichting. I don't know, probably people are going to bitch about this, but like the Dutch BBC in a way, maybe. So they were given the task to stream at least to record that court proceeding and volunteer their content to other parties. I was misinformed there. They are not volunteering their content to other media parties. If you want that content, you have to pay and you have to make an announcement beforehand. I called the NOS, that Dutch BBC, afterwards and said, well, I was in court. I'd like to have your recordings. Thank you. And they said, well, no, can't do that. If we start that, it's a lot of work. You had to have asked it beforehand, even though nobody ever mentioned that. So that was the NOS. That's not cool. It's called the pool arrangement, poolregeling. I felt cheated there. However, the courtroom themselves streamed it as well. So there were two recording parties, the NOS and the courtroom themselves. And day after court proceedings, that stream was put online. So you can see what happened in that courtroom. So that's cool. We have transparency there. It was recorded. And I was in that courtroom, so I saw what happened. In addition to those recordings. I wasn't sure I was going to get in. And Mark, you know, I was in London at the Julian Assange hearing in February. And I showed up early that Monday, like 8. So I consider that early, 8 a.m. There was a huge queue of journalists already in front of the courtroom at Belmarsh Prison, at the Woolwich Crown Court. And Stefania Marici from Italy, she was like in front of the queue. She knew what was going on. So with the Assange hearing, she was there at 7 or something. She knew she wasn't going to be allowed in if she was like there at 8 or 8:30.
Yeah, I think to your credit, I think you were the only independent journalist who actually went to London there to cover that lawsuit against Assange.
Yeah, I was the only Dutch one. No, Tim de Wit, which is our Dutch NOS foreign correspondent from London. He was in that court too, but only on the first half of the day on the Monday. So he was only covering the American position.
Yeah, that's why I specifically mentioned the word independent, right? I mean,
Exactly.
the NOS is, like you said, it's not really as independent as we would hope it to be.
I was assuming it wouldn't be the queue that I remember from London, so there I was walking at 9 a.m. to that court building, and court proceedings were to start at 11 a.m. Nobody was there, but in front of the traffic lights, there was this little guy with a trolley with cameras on and cables. That was the guy from the NOS. So we both arrived at an empty courtroom. He was doing his cables, and I was trying to get in as well. So I managed to get in. And there were 20 journalists all in all when it started at 11. And then those guys organizing this court, lawyer Jeroen Pols and activists of the Viruswaanzin organization, that would translate like virus insanity. They consider these measures to be insane or madness. So Jeroen Pols as a lawyer, Willem Engel, they showed up as the party demanding the state to stop these measures and stop this new emergency law. They walk into the courtroom, seeing those big glass panes between their seats, plexiglass panes. And I recall that plexiglass intimidating sheets of how do you call it? Isolation between the lawyer and their client. I mean, to me, this looked just like Julian Assange being in a bulletproof cage in glass in the back of his courtroom. It's all intimidation, right? Assange had been in solitary isolation for a year in the hardest prison regime of the UK, and he was still in a bulletproof cage. And in walked Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel in this courtroom in the Netherlands. And sure enough, there was this big plexiglass pane between them. Not bulletproof, but still stressing the fact that coronavirus is dangerous and that they're not supposed to sneeze on each other. But that's the whole point. They say, well, these measures that we're taking, with the knowledge that we have now, these measures are without any ground. And by the way, the state has not volunteered any grounds. So can we please remove those plexiglass planes, please, at least between us? And the judge said, well, no. The courtroom has put those plates there. I don't even know if they can be removed. So Willem Engel lifts up his pane and says, yeah, they can be removed. Well, they have to give in, and they were not to be removed. So they were. And judge said, well, you can always lean back and talk to each other in private behind, be close to each other within the 1.5 meters behind your plexiglass pane. So that was the start of that court proceeding. Now, this judge had been appointed 2 days before the court session. Remember, these legal proceedings were announced 2 or 3 weeks in advance. It took the Netherlands court system 3 weeks to schedule this session to allow the judge to properly prepare. So a judge was properly prepared, but just at the time that Dutch state attorney volunteered his response, that was the time that the appointed judge fell ill, or at least had a cough. So, well, yeah, Dutch regulations in the corona time, if the judge has a cough, he is to be replaced. He is to go to isolation, confinement for 2 weeks, and he can't be the judge. So first thing the judge said, the replacement judge said in these court proceedings was, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm the new judge, but I consider myself fully prepared, even though I only had 2 days, and I can do this court proceedings. But it is a bit odd that she continued by making the statement and said, I have good news also. The other judge, the one that had a cough, he was tested for corona, but he didn't have it. So we replaced our prepared judge with another one, even though the replaced judge was not tested for corona and didn't appear to have signs of the coronavirus. But he was replaced regardless by another one that had previously made a statement making her appear to be biased. So she has made statements about the numbers of casualties, for instance. Now, the number of casualties in the Netherlands is a topic of debate. How many people have died of the coronavirus? And if you die of the coronavirus, are you a healthy individual that contracted the virus and that died of that cause? Or are you an elderly person, or are you severely overweight, or were you in a car accident, or are you suffering terminal cancer, and did you contract that virus? Now, all of those patients are counted the same. If you have the coronavirus, you will be counted as a corona victim. Now, Jeroen Pols, the lawyer, made an example and said, well, if you're in a car accident, if you die within the first 2 days after the accident, your cause of death is supposed to be the accident. But if you die on the 3rd day and following that, and you're tested for corona, then you're supposed to have died from the coronavirus, regardless the injury that you suffered. And the same would apply for your age, your overweight, your other medical conditions. So this point was made in court, pretty much for the first time since we had the lockdown mid-March. Because here is the state lawyer, and their specialist of the RIVM, het Rijksinstituut voor Volksgezondheid en Milieu, I think. The Dutch, I don't know the abbreviation. Do you know, Mark? FCC? What's it called in the United States?
CDC in the United States.
Disease
Center for Disease Control.
All right. So they had their RIVM, their CDC specialist, in court as well. And these questions were never answered as of mid-March until court day, like a couple of days ago. How many people have died of the coronavirus? And Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel, party that are starting these court proceedings, are saying, well, finally we meet each other and finally we get to ask the question. And judge said, no, you don't get to ask the other party questions. If questions are asked, I will ask them as the judge. Okay, said Willem Engel. Well, judge, would you please ask them then how many people have died of the coronavirus? Because if I go to the website of the CDC, of the RIVM, it's like 80. 80 people will have died in the Netherlands of the coronavirus. That would be 80 people, and I can be wrong. It could be 85. 80 people have died without other issues. like they're way old, they were dying anyway of cancer or whatever. So the official numbers of corona casualties in the Netherlands are exceeding 6,000. And that's what's being claimed by the state's lawyers and the RIVM, the CDC specialist, and the virus madness group that started this court proceeding said, well, yeah, they would have died anyway, maybe a month, maybe 3 months later, but they had complicated factors. And the only real number of corona victims is like in the 80 number. So corona still is a horrible disease. I mean, you suffer from the thing, and lots of people got sick, but 80 people dying and 6,000 with complicating factors, they might have died anyway. And the point also was made, that's comparable to our flu season in 2017, 2018. So does that really legitimize the lockdown, the cancellation of our right to demonstrate? And pretty much for the first time ever since March, the lockdown started, we have people through a judge asking the state these questions. Because at every press conference our Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, gave, these questions were not asked explicitly and not answered explicitly by the state. So now these questions had to be asked through the judge. And she didn't really ask those questions, or at least she didn't push. And we still didn't get answers. Now, Willem Engel actually made a statement and said, well, Judge, please tell me, are you allowed to lie in court in the Netherlands? I was thinking we were not allowed to lie. So maybe the other party, maybe the state lawyer, maybe they would retract on their claim that 6,000 people plus have died of the coronavirus. So that's pretty much how that court proceeding went. And it took over 2 hours, and it turned emotional. And I didn't fall asleep. I've been to court before as the audience, and sometimes it's boring. This was not boring. This was a movie with a cliffhanger and everything. So this was on edge of the seat proceedings. One of the people in the courtroom was a lawyer from Germany. Just the day before, a similar case took place in Germany. And Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel were in Germany in court there to see how that went. And I was talking to that Belgium, excuse me. This took place in Belgium, and they were in Belgium in court, and I was talking to that Belgium lawyer and asked him, so how did your court proceedings go? Was that streamed to the internet too? He started laughing. No, we don't do that in Belgium. So that was not recorded. And then I said, okay, what we had here was pretty emotional. He said, no, it was more emotional in Belgium. So I don't know how that went, but what's happening here in the Netherlands in court took place in Belgium, kind of similar, a day earlier. Now, at the end of this court session, like the last minute, like really in the last minute, and if this were a football match, the referee would take his little whistle, raise it, and consider blowing the whistle. And our judge actually said, if I had a hammer, I'm raising my hammer and I'm striking this court session to be adjourned unless anyone has a final closing statement. At that point, Jeroen Pols, the lawyer, and Willem Engel, his client, leaned back behind the plexiglass pane, looked at each other. You couldn't hear what they were saying, but you could read their body language, and they both would go, well, I don't trust this judge. This is not an impartial judge. Now in the Netherlands, you can file for mistrial, I suppose. I apologies beforehand for wrong choice of words. The Dutch word is wraking. And I did look it up, what that would translate to. It would be challenge. So you can challenge the court proceedings. So we have a special a group of judges that would decide if the court proceedings were impartial or not. So these two people, the claiming people, Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel, they, in the last minute, said, Judge, this took place. You didn't push through on asking the questions. You appear to have been prejudiced by claiming there were lots of casualties in the Netherlands. We we'd like to ask this challenging chamber of judges if you are indeed impartial and can rule in this court. So this was like in a football match. This was like the referee is raising his whistle and somebody scores a point and decides the match. So this was a change of the court proceedings it was in the air. It was hanging there all through the proceedings, and it happened in the last minute. So that was the end of that. We went out. Another journalist interviewed them, so that took 10, 15 minutes, and I got text messages from other people outside. There were hundreds of people outside courtroom. They were waiting for their heroes. They were waiting for Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel. They were putting flowers in front of the courtroom. I said, well, where are they? Are they coming out anytime soon? And I said to Willem, you have to go out, man. You weren't at the protest last week at the Malieveld because it was banned. It was not allowed. These people want to see you. So I was walking behind him with a little camera, and he went out. And Mark, I believe you have the clip ready. Do you?
Yeah, give me a minute. I'll load it in soon.
Just tell me when you have it ready.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Yeah. So Willem Engel, that's a guy in dreadlocks that you'll see in a moment on the YouTube channel. He's going out. He's and hundreds of people. He's like a rock star at that moment. People out there and they're cheering him on because they've been in lockdown. They've lost their jobs. Many people are unemployed. They can't go to school. The Netherlands is closed. Has been closed for months, just like the rest of the world. And then he walks out and people start cheering and singing, and they're singing Willem bedankt, which means thank you, Willem. So he's kind of their hero. So I'll just continue talking until Mark has that little segment ready.
Yeah,
so,
and in the meantime, I do have a question too.
Yeah, sure.
And that is the new the whole lockdown thing has been like loosened up the last few weeks, and then it is kind of strange that they are now coming up with this whole emergency law, and I've read into these laws, and it is very shocking that the level of restrictions they are going to implement on people and the fines they are going to demand from you if you don't follow these new rules. To me, the timing is strange. I mean, even if you would agree with these things, wouldn't it make sense that they would have done this like early on during the when it just started and when they were all freaking out about this so-called virus? And
this is what I forgot. I forgot an important bit. This is what actually happened. So, the evening before court proceedings, our Prime Minister Mark Rutte holds a press conference with his Minister of Health. And the evening before court proceedings, he relaxes some of the measures. Not the social distancing measure. That one has to stand. But some other measures are relaxed. So you're allowed to have bigger gatherings now. You don't have to limit them to, I believe, 30. You can be together with 100 people now. You can visit the hooker again. The sex work is allowed again as of July 1st. However, the 1.5 meter distancing rule still applies. I don't know how those two combine, but some measures were relaxed, and this is extremely important. So this was in the evening before court. Next day, 11 a.m., the state attorney, the state lawyer, says, I'm surprised that virus madness organization didn't even mention the press conference of our prime minister yesterday evening. I mean, most of those measures were relaxed. The grounds underneath their lawsuit pretty much has been relaxed. And then she mentioned that press conference the evening before, like 10 times. I didn't count, so might have been 15 or might have been 8. Her defense, the state's defense, was based almost solely on the press conference of our prime minister the evening before. That was not a valid, very solid defense. And pretty much, so this is me in the courtroom going, aha. So that press conference was pretty much given as a combined effort between that lawyer and our prime minister, and maybe even the judge. So yeah, Mark, you're spot on.
Okay, so I'll load in the video now for you guys. And you want to say anything about the video before we start it, or?
Oh no, just this is me with a little handycam following Willem Engel leaving the courtroom, walking down that aisle to where the hundreds of people are outside cheering him on.
Okay, let's just start it then.
Ik heb mijn handen vol. Het is fantastisch om te zien. Om te merken dat dit echt bij de hele bevolking leeft.
Okay.
That's also something not typically see in the Netherlands, would you, Mark? Do you recall this taking place before?
No, never. No. Now, about the whole new emergency law that they are like planning for us, it wasn't just this movement speaking out against it. I mean, I did see a lot of things in the media, like big newspapers were talking about it. But the strange thing is, they are talking about this new law, but they are not spending any effort on covering these protests against it. Well, obviously, this would be the moment for people to actually stand up against this. This was strange to me, and I just read all the different things they want to do on the site privacyfirst.nl, and it was an opinion article, but still it gave a good summary of the different things they want to do. And to me, the most shocking things were, for example, removing the concept of huisvredebreuk from the law, that the police can just like go into your home and arrest people who don't live there in your home. Now, if that is true, that would be, of course, shocking. We don't even see that in the worst countries in the world at this point. They always need permission from some judge or from some a prosecutor office. But and you have the whole tracking apps with biometric passports. You have the fact that they are
Let's run by those. So the Netherlands have, with a bunch of other European nations, already purchased those biometric passports, right? So that's one thing.
okay, yeah.
The other thing is our Minister of Health has also already ordered some vaccines, or spent money on them anyway. And that Minister of Health, Hugo de Jonge, said, well, I don't know. No, he hasn't. They didn't say I don't care, but he meant to say I don't care. I don't know. I don't care about hydroxychloroquine or zinc. The only thing that's going to save us is a vaccine. So all balls are on vaccine. We're going to go for vaccine, and only when we have that can we relax all measures. So we're purchasing health passports. We're purchasing vaccines that don't exist just yet. That's another point that was made in court. So these guys finally get their say, and they ask the judge, and they ask the state, and they ask the CDC, the RIVM people, and say, well, coronavirus is not new. I mean, we've had coronavirus before. This is just a new variety of coronavirus. And in some ways, it looks like influenza, like the flu virus. I mean, it's all respiratory and it's a virus. Now, we know for a fact that you cannot inoculate. You cannot. There is no vaccine against influenza. I mean, it might help some people, alleviate some of the flu symptoms, but there is no vaccine like there is for some other diseases. So there is no precedent for a vaccine to work for corona-like viruses. That's one argument, and the other one is it has always taken years of development before a vaccine would be there, and now we're trying to develop one in half a year. Mankind has never pulled that one off, and when we did pull it off, it didn't work. That's basically what they said. So why are we pushing for a vaccine? Those questions were asked in court. They weren't answered, but at least they were asked. Now, for the Dutch viewers here, I've uploaded a bunch of segments of that court proceeding in small bits on their Twitter handle, Viruswaanzin at Twitter, or on the channel of Willem Engel that you're watching this on maybe now on YouTube. So you can see for yourself how these questions were asked and how they were answered by the other party or not answered by the other party, and how the judge treated them. This is maybe the important part of this interview, Mark. So why am I doing this? I'm just a podcaster. I'm trying to find activists and trying to help those guys. And if Assange is in trial, I'll go to London and try to cover that if nobody else does. And by the way, we have a date still, Mark, yeah? In September we're going to UK.
Goes on as planned.
We will cover the next one. Anyway, but that's... So I hear about this court case in the Netherlands, and I reach out to this organization and I say, well, can I help you out? And one thing led to another, and I see their tweets, and I see the responses to their tweets, and I see the response the Netherlands gives these guys, and I see the response the Dutch governments give these guys, and our big media gives these guys. And the hate, and also of many, many, many new Twitter handles, for instance, that appear to have just been created just to troll. Well, that's also pretty unprecedented. So the people manning the Twitter account, they didn't know this was coming. So there's an all-out attack on their information coming out through the social.
Yeah. The Netherlands has some businesses involved with creating botnets for political reasons. Not many people will know that it was actually Barack Obama who even hired a Dutch company to manage his whole PR campaign using these botnets. And I'm not sure if we should even mention a Dutch political party being involved with that, but I'm going to do it anyway because the political party GroenLinks actually hired the same company to do this in the past. Not right now, but in the past. So political parties are using this actively, and they that includes, of course, also the political parties who are in power at this moment. And we can argue about different reasons they have for this. The fact is that in this new so-called emergency law, they have the ability to ban protests, and now you can unleash a theory on this. It might not be about this specific protest, but we are soon, in a month or 2 or 3, we are going to see the damage that the whole lockdown thing has caused. I was a few days ago, I was in the supermarket and I heard like the radio playing in the background, and on the radio they said 120,000 young people were already unemployed now, and it happened in the last months during the whole lockdown. So due to the lockdown, 120,000 young people became unemployed. And that's only an example, because I've read articles saying that there are an estimated 150,000 businesses going really bad in the Netherlands, and this number could be a lot higher. So we're going to see that a lot of people will lose their jobs, their businesses go bankrupt, and that will cause a lot of unrest in the Netherlands. And now you can unleash this theory that such a law that will ban protests will come in handy to them when all these people are actually getting angry and don't know what to do, and they will start protesting and start demanding. So that's a theory, but I would not be surprised that this is actually one of the thoughts behind it. We've seen it. We've seen it in the past. Go ahead.
Go ahead. To speculate on motive, I try to observe what's going on, and I feel this. So here's my personal opinion on this, and that's why I'm all out supporting these guys. So I don't know if you guys watch movies. Probably you do, but there's this Will Smith movie, right? I Am Legend, and there's a bunch of other scary movies as well. When there's a virus outbreak and like 99% of the civilization dies. Well, if you're in a situation where like 10% or more of people would actually die or suffer, that might be grounds for imposing restriction. But when you have a situation like that, like a very contagious Ebola worldwide or something, you still would not need to impose restrictions. People would do it voluntarily. They would follow your advice. So what we have here is coronavirus, and if you suffer from that thing, that's a horrible disease. But still, it's compared to 17.4 million people living in the Netherlands, even tens of thousands of people would be a very small amount, and that would, in my opinion, not be a ground to remove the right to protest. And if our Dutch government and our Dutch mayor of The Hague, this is why I'm pissed off. The Hague, that's where the Malieveld is. That's where our national venue is for protesting national policies. If our mayor allows a certain topic to go through on a Saturday and disallows another topic which goes against state policy, if he blocks that on a Sunday, that's when we have effectively turned into China or North Korea or whatever location where protests are not allowed if the state doesn't like that. This is the measures that are imposed now with emergency measures. Oh boy. Oh, sorry about that. And they are going to put that into law now with an emergency law. Now, the thing is, they tried to do that July 1st with an emergency procedure before summer recess. They didn't manage because the law was too flaky, the concept law. But we haven't seen the concept law. It's hidden. It's a secret hidden concept law. And just to close off on this thing, we've been ranting for too long already. But all the supporting documents supporting our government's position and their policies, they're hidden as well. They are all secret. The CDC organization in the Netherlands, the RIVM CDC Outbreak Management Team organization, that's a hidden organization. Their minutes, hun notulen, are hidden. People in the Outbreak Management Team have signed a non-disclosure agreement. They're not supposed to talk about what takes place on their deliberations. And our Prime Minister says, well, I'm just sailing on their course. They're setting the course. But we don't know what our Prime Minister is sailing on. But he is restricting the right to protest, and he's trying to put that into law. That's when I say, hold my beer. I'm going to help this organization organizing demonstrations, organizing a lawsuit. And I'm going to buy flowers and put them in front of my city hall. Also, I'm going to do anything I can to stop our politicians doing this. And here's the sad part. Our parliament has 150 people in them, and we elected those March 2017. Where are they? We volunteered our petition of 500,000 signatories last week, and there were 4 or 5 members of parliament that actually showed up on that online session. And I don't know what they're going to do with it. I wonder what they're going to do with it. I wonder if it's going to be discussed in parliament. Are they going to block that concept law? Are they going to say the right to protest, the right to hug, the right to give somebody a hand, the right to have sex, all those things that have been banned for months, the right to work? I mean, hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs. Kids have not gone to school for months. If you need psychological help, you weren't able to see your psychiatrist. If you were dying, you weren't able to see your family. You weren't able to say goodbye to a dying family member over the last couple of months. All these measures were taken by our government on advice of an organization that is working secretly. And now those things are going to be put into law. And I agree with you, Mark. I feel also, and I don't want to go into mode, but you feel it hanging in the air. Bigger protests are coming, and they need bigger tools to block the protests.
Yeah, and on that note, I'm looking at the whole chat on the Viruswaanzin channel, but we are also broadcasting on the different anonymous outlets, and to all the anonymous listening, and perhaps you don't know what this is about, and maybe you don't even agree with some protesters, but you have to understand that banning any form of legal protest, unviolent protest, peaceful protest, is going to affect you too. And I know many of you were in support, or still are in support, with the Black Lives Matter protests. Now, those were allowed to go on back then, but in this new law, that's this new emergency law, it is also possible for them to ban those protests. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but they can do this. When they don't like you protesting, they are able to stop it legally, then, and that nationwide. And it is going to happen in other countries around the Netherlands too, and perhaps in the rest of the world too. And it has always been important for us, for Anons, that we amplify people who need it, that we offer a voice to people who need a voice. We have done this historically. We don't make political choices, and we don't decide who is allowed to be heard and who isn't. All people are equal in that sense, and we are here now to support these people and to support this action against these restrictive new emergency laws in the Netherlands. And right now it's happening here, and it's becoming visible. People are showing that they are unhappy with what is going on, and there is a chance to act now and to amplify this, and we should on our different outlets. So all of you Anons who are listening to this, you just please help to share this around, and and also inform your friends and other crews to share it around. So this is just a quick message in between, Rico.
I think we should close here, and I always close on I have to close on a positive note. So what I didn't mention, maybe in passing, I did mention it, but I didn't stress it enough. So this organization, this organization doing these things, they are doing this with a big, bright letter motto, with a big banner over their heads, and on everything they say, they go, we're not violent. There's only one way we can get out of this together, and that's if we allow each other to hug each other, and if we allow each other to help each other, and if we allow each other to have a protest. So the only thing if we're to pull through, if we are to pull out of this as a society, as a community together, then our motto has to be love and patience. We are up against a mighty system change that needs to take place, and the only way it's going to change for the better is if we do this through a shared sense of community and love and patience. So on a negative note, you could say, well, they blocked the protest of love. And they did, because these guys are as non-violent as you have ever met, and still they were blocked. And then, but that's what they're determined to do. And I'm much looking forward to seeing whatever they come up with next. And I would urge everyone listening to this all over the world, because you're suffering the same corona measures as everybody. So just in the news, we have to stop, Mark, but I have to make this point also. Probably we'll be going on for an hour. But anyway, just in the news, in the United States, in Florida and in Texas, there's excessive, and also in Germany, excessive corona cases now. And I'm not ruling out that there are actually people getting sick, but what's in the news, in the mainstream media, it said there's many new corona cases. And I go, corona cases, what does that mean really? I've just been in court, and I've just learned that a corona case is not somebody that's died of corona. It could be anything. So what they're doing right now is testing many more people. And if you test people with a how reliable is that test? Does anybody know? This was asked in court. So that test, how reliable is that thing? Could we please have those documents that are secrets? And the judge didn't ask that to the state, so we still don't know how reliable those tests are. But if you test a lot of people and those tests are not reliable, I mean, you could have had another coronavirus, or maybe you could have had an influenza virus. If that test triggers on that thing, you're going to get a lot of more people infected. So they can manipulate the number of people, the number of corona cases. You don't have to have anyone in hospital to get your second wave. And the second wave can be instigated at any time. So personally, this is a personal note, but I will believe that second wave when I see lots of people sick in the hospital or people dying. But currently, all I see is stats coming out of Texas currently. Well, I wonder how many people are in the hospital in Texas, and I wonder what they actually suffer. Because I do know in the Netherlands, many people having cancer or other urgent operations waiting, they're going to the hospital now. So if you're testing everybody going into the hospital and they're testing positive for corona, for whatever reason, you're going to get your exponential charge. I don't trust those charts anymore. And maybe that's the fallout of these measures of the last couple of months. You don't know what to believe anymore. But if you see the second wave coming, I would recommend the powers that be to be very transparent about where their numbers are coming from, to be very transparent about the legitimacy of their tests, to be very transparent about the number of people hospitalized with actual corona symptoms in their lungs, and people actually dying of that virus and not of lack of medical help because they had to forego that in the past months. Your turn, Mark.
Yeah, and this thing has obviously been amplified quite a bit by the media, the whole coronavirus thing. But I'm not sure if many Dutch people even know that there is that in 2004 another coronavirus was discovered in the Netherlands, and it is known NL63, COV NL63. It was actually discovered in the Netherlands, and it is already spread all over the world, and it causes similar symptoms. And it is said that it already causes 4.7% of all respiratory illness, all common respiratory illnesses. And now, I can ask you, but I already know the answer. Have you ever heard of this virus? Because I did.
Well, we haven't met. I don't think you and I have met. I'm looking forward to going to United Kingdom with you to see that assignment.
Yeah.
But I'm also not hearing many of your broadcasts because you typically start them at 3 a.m. I'm old, right? 49. I don't wait. I'm not listening to your shows. But no, I haven't heard of that thing, and I haven't heard of it on your show. No,
yeah. So there is like, why weren't they as scared of it back then? I'm just thinking about that. And why is it so different right now? I'm not suggesting anything, but I'm just saying, like, why is it like this? Because now there is this huge media attention, and now actually, like in the Netherlands, they're already like reducing the lockdown measures, but they are now going to introduce this whole almost like Orwellian emergency law situation. And just think, like, you never did that for those viruses who are literally causing like almost 5% of all the respiratory illnesses, and that means that it's just everywhere.
Maybe we should close here because you're going into motive, and that I don't find it.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Okay, I do have one question for you, and that is, we have to tell the listeners what they can do to help out, and where they can reach the reliable people to fight back against this.
I'm not sure who's reliable anymore. But this is what I think. Everybody has, if you want to know what's going on around you, the only one that you can rely on is the people that you trust and you yourself. Now, the profession of journalism is not a protected profession. So if you consider yourself to be a journalist, you are. So inform yourself, be your own judge, try to educate yourself on stuff that's going on around you. Listen to people that may not sound comfortable when you hear them, and listen to stuff that does sound comfortable, and try to make your own sense of the world. Because if you only listen to one certain channel, be that Donald Trump, or be that Joe Biden, or be that Black Lives Matter, or be that this organization, Virus Update, or be that me as a podcaster, don't trust just one. Just trust your own conscience and investigative mind to try to make sense of the world. And have this would be my closing statement. Have faith in human nature, and not just our immune system. I mean, I'm not so scared about this virus. I mean, many people die of diseases. I'm not downplaying any of that, but we have an immune system that has evolved, and that's pretty sturdy, and we have a sense of community and love that is also has seen us through worst crisis. So if you want to weather this storm, just support one another, hug each other, look each other up, even though your prime minister said it's not allowed. That would be my closing statement, Mark.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, I guess that's it for now then, and yeah, just share it around, and I'm sure we'll follow up on this. I mean, I'm convinced this isn't over, this this fight, and we will continue to help to amplify this. And I mean, this was a way to amplify your voices, and to make sure you're heard in the rest of the world, right? In outside of the Netherlands. That's why we did it in English. I saw in the chat some people were annoyed by the fact that it was in English, because I know you want to have this in Dutch, but we're supposed to like reach out to the rest of the world. They have to be aware what's going on in our country, in the Netherlands, and pressure can also come from the outside. Like governments are like in history are able to hide a lot, but in this digitalized world, more and more gets out, and this is a way for us to actually show everything to the outside world. And there will activists from outside of the Netherlands might soon join in with you, and maybe that will give you some extra hope on that. And for the rest, it was very important to just amplify your voices, because yeah, this is your right to protest. And
all right, so I think this was the Anonymous Bites Back podcast, and you can find those guys if you type in Anonymous Bites Back.
Yeah, type it anywhere, you will find it.
Yeah, type it anywhere. I'm Rico Brouwer, and host of the Potkaars podcast. Potkaars is Dutch, like a pot with a candle. Conversations that shed light and hope, or that's the intention anyway. And we're broadcasting also on the channel of Willem Engel, who is one of the guys behind the Viruswaanzin initiative, virus insanity or virus madness. Madness being the measures taken. You can find that in Dutch. And, well, thanks for having me, Mark. Talk to you soon.
Talk soon.